Today we're further discussing the Montreal Canadiens as a potential trades we might see, including some new teams likely interested in defenseman Ben Chiarot. Plus, we have a lot more commentary from a few different sources on Carey Price and whether or not Montreal might consider doing a trade and what that might look like. We also have other news out of Montreal, a big hire in the front office. Plus, we have other details to talk about here today, including some injuries, waivers news, also in the Canadian landscape for games being postponed or reduced fans, what there might be for an alternative. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about here today. Kick things off with the confirmation that the arena deal for the Calgary Flames between them and the city of Calgary is officially dead. It was actually officially dead a few days back. The deal had to be reached and agreed to move forward to the next step, which would be starting to build and develop by December 31st, and that was not done. Of course, we talked about before how they ran into a stumbling block in negotiations where there was essentially, I think it was between $10 and $20 million of extra cost that the city wanted the team to be able to take on and look after, and there really was not any appetite from them to do that. So unfortunately, no deal was reached. The Calgary Flames actually have an existing long-term lease by, I believe, 11 years on their existing arena, so there's no real danger of the team having to up and move or anything of that nature, but certainly everybody agrees that a new arena is really needed to take the team to the next level, especially strictly from a business standpoint. If you look at how a lot of other teams have increased in valuations, a lot of that has to do with getting new, up-to-date, more modern arenas. So certainly an important piece there in Calgary. It's going to be challenged. A lot of people still think could be just negotiating tactics, and we might see the city and the team get back together and negotiate again in the future. We'll have to see. But that existing deal that was agreed to some time back is officially dead. Now, moving on to some other news. We have a few things to talk about here today with the Montreal Canadiens, but they did announce today a very important hiring. They have hired Chantal Machebeé, who's got over 30 years experience in RDS, working in sports journalism for quite a long time. She's been hired as the Vice President of Communications, so she will report directly to the president of that department, which is France-Margaret Bélanger. So again, another prominent Quebec journalist, for obviously French speaking. Obviously nice to see another female get a high-ranking position as well within the hockey world. It's always good for diversity. She was the first woman actually back in '89 to have a sports anchor show in Quebec, and like I said, she got over 30 years. I think she was with 32 years, I believe it was, with RDS. So certainly extremely experienced with dealing with the media. She'll be great for that. She was a media member for all those years, so she would know a lot of the media quite well, and obviously communication would be a huge part of her former job, so it makes a lot of sense that she would transition into that. So looks like a really good news story, good hire there by the Habs. Now, other news today on the waiver wire. Yesterday's waiver options were cleared, so Victor Rask of Minnesota, as well as Zane McIntyre, also in Minnesota, who was being signed to a two-way contract from an AHL deal, so they both cleared, so nothing happens there. Rask is going to be assigned to the taxi squad for the Wild, and today we have another player on waivers, which is Tampa Bay Lightning forward Riley Nash. We've seen Nash on waivers earlier this year, which is how he ended up in Tampa. Between his time with Winnipeg and Tampa, he's now played in 25 games this year and has recorded 0 points. There is a good possibility that Nikita Kucherov, I know he's close to returning, and the Lightning are likely freeing up a roster spot to make that happen. So that's likely victim of the numbers game there for Nash. Hard to say what happens. He was claimed once before. He's one of those players on a cheaper contract, decent fourth line center, but obviously, not as good as he used to be. Otherwise, teams would be hanging on to him. So we'll see where things go on that front. When it comes to a quick update on some COVID stuff, Matthews and McDavid both had positive tests in the last day or two. McDavid's officially out tonight versus the Leafs in COVID protocol, whereas Matthews was able to avoid that. So certainly different outcomes there. Certainly not good. And the Oilers are already a team that's been struggling mightily lately, losing 10 of 12. Of course, no McDavid tonight. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is also injured, going to be out for about 3 to 4 weeks. And of course, we saw the somewhat messy situation between Mikko Koskinen and Coach Dave Tippett after the last loss. Tippett Maybe I have no problem with what he said. He was asked about the brutal error that Koskinen had made in the giveaway early in the last game, and he was pretty blunt, pretty straightforward with how he felt about it. But at the same time, I guess Koskinen didn't take things so well and said that as much as he needs to be better, that he also hasn't had very much good run support lately. The team hasn't scored as much, and he even went as far to say that he can't score goals. So certainly, he didn't take the coach's words too kindly. Tippett did clarify that he, even though he was frustrated and it was a brutal play that cost the air early on, that Koskinen also made some big saves, trying to kind of save face there a little bit, but ultimately, frustration appears to be boiling over there in Edmonton. We keep talking about the possibility of some changes, but it just seems like it's difficult to do. So I don't know what Ken Holland is going to do here sooner than later. That something has to give. After tonight's game against the Leafs, they do have a bit of a break for a little while, so we'll see what happens and what kind of solutions they can find. Will we see a coaching change? A goalie change would have to have Koskinen going out, and I'm not sure that there's a big appetite out there for that. I mean, he's only in the final year of the contract, thankfully, so if a team was willing to take it, at least it's only for the short term. But you have to wonder what is going to happen in Edmonton. I know Mike Smith started tonight's game, and as I'm recording this, the game's already going between the Leafs and the Oilers, and Smith started with a brutal goal. The Nylander goal was another brutal situation where Nylander took the shot, went off the boards, come back towards the net, and was really right off of Smith, and I don't know how that happens. Like, it's one of those things that when you're struggling and nothing's going your way, something like that happens too. So Smith basically scored the goal into his own net. Just another brutal situation. The goaltending needs to be way better if they're going to stand a chance. And I understand Koskinen's comments about needing more run support and he can't score the goals. But at the end of the day, goaltenders do need to realize too, in my opinion, that they have a major impact on how the team feels playing in front of them. And when the confidence isn't there, and when you have a brutal mistake and a bad goal early on, it sucks the life out of the team. And that can impact how they play offensively and defensively in front of you. So, they have so much impact, and it can be so positive and give them, great energy if they're playing well, making big saves for them. Whereas in there, it goes the opposite way and things are brutally going in that shouldn't be. It makes it hard. So, to me, we're bound to hit a tipping point here soon. Something has to give at Edmonton. But what is the question? Now, there was also an idea floated here by Elliotte Friedman, who's been talking to a lot of people around the league, as he usually always does, and a new idea has popped up for getting some Canadian teams to be able to play with fans. Now, of course, we know that pretty much every NHL arena in Canada is either down to 0 fans or extremely limited. I think the 1,000 fans is probably the most right now, I believe, across the NHL landscape in Canada. And one place, though, that doesn't have those same restrictions, which I didn't even realize until yesterday, was Saskatchewan. The province of Saskatchewan does not have an NHL team, but they don't have the indoor capacity restrictions like other provinces do when it comes to sporting events. So now they do have a good-sized arena. It's not quite up to NHL standards, and they obviously don't really, in my opinion, have the population to support an NHL team, which is why they've never gotten one. But the Saskatoon Blades in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, of the Western Hockey League, they have a pretty big-sized arena for a junior team that can seat 15,000 fans. It's called SJSTerritory Center, and it might be an option. There's been some discussions. I don't know if it's really all that far and even really remotely realistic, but if they would allow it in the NHL and the team and them could work out an agreement, maybe we could see Canadian teams play a game or two in a neutral site with fans, so at least they can have an opportunity to earn some money instead of playing in front of no fans. I mean, it's something that we don't know how long these restrictions are going to be in place. I wouldn't think it's going to be too long, but still, every game that goes by with no fans in attendance is a major financial loss for these teams, and they can't withstand it for too long. So you have to think they will seriously consider anything like that if it's an opportunity to make enough money. So as much as I don't think it's pretty likely that we'll see it, it's an interesting thought, interesting idea, and curious to see if we might actually see it here sometime in the next few weeks. Because obviously NHL executives had mentioned this to Friedman as something that they thought of and wondered if it could happen. We'll have to wait and see if anybody thinks it's serious enough to push it to see if they can make it happen. Now, before we jump further into the trade rumor section of today's video, I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. And guess what? Hockey fans are buzzing because hockey is back. Want to know what else is buzzing? The Lawnmower 4.0 from our friends at Manscaped, who are the global leaders in male grooming, trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. I highly recommend the Performance Package 4.0, which includes their new state-of-the-art Lawnmower 4.0, as well as some other great features. The lawnmower itself has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multifunction switch that can engage as a travel lock, gives you the ability to turn on an LED spotlight as well for a more precise shave. Also, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions before, Manscaped is about much more than just a trimmer. They have everything, all aspects covered in male grooming, including some great formulations like their brand new ultra premium body wash to keep you smelling great all day long. It's certainly a big hit here. I absolutely love it. They also have other exfoliators and gels to keep all aspects of your grooming needs covered. I highly recommend you check out manscaped.com. Use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using promo code TSH. So thanks very much for watching our promotional content. I greatly appreciate it. I highly recommend you check out the Manscaped products. There's a lot of great new stuff been launched lately. And of course, with promo code TSH, you have 20% off your entire purchase. So certainly recommend checking that out. And thank you for supporting our sponsor. Now, on to the trade talk of the day. Of course, a lot of talk around between Elliot Friedman and his latest 32 Thoughts blog, as well as Pierre LeBrun, the latest Athletic article, talking about the Coyotes, and trade talks around Jacob Chychrun are reporting to be picking up. Now, of course, we don't really have much in the way of teams that are being linked to the Coyotes and having these discussions, but from what they're saying, there's a lot of interest, and a lot of teams are, fueling conversations here with the Coyotes, and they're not shying away from it. So many still feel there's a high chance, if the right deal comes to the Coyotes, that they'll indeed move the young top defenseman who not long ago was considered the one untouchable player they would continue to build around. And he's not the only guy in that roster, clearly, that's available. A guy like Phil Kessel is widely expected to be moved before the deadline, pending unrestricted free agent. Long history in the NHL with good success, a couple Stanley Cups to his name. Might be intriguing for teams to add before the deadline for the playoffs. And of course, even Lawson Crouse, who's obviously a bit younger, is approaching unrestricted free agency for the first time and having a decent season again on a bad team. So another player who could be a depth piece on many other teams could find himself on the move as well. Probably unlikely that the Coyotes keep him in the picture long term as well if they're able to get any kind of draft currency or younger prospect to add into their mix for the future. So the Coyotes are going to be a very busy team. Obviously, they're dead last in the NHL for a reason. They're obviously not fielding a very good product on the ice. I think they're certainly team tank. They don't want to be high in the standings. They want to get the high draft picks to build this thing up for the future. They have a lot of other things they're working on behind the scenes, trying to keep themselves alive and well in Arizona. We'll see. They're going to be an interesting team to watch for a variety of reasons on and off the ice here over the next little while. Now, the rest of the trade talk today really does focus around the Montreal Canadiens. And again, the combination of Elliot Friedman's 32 Thoughts blog, as well as Pierre LeBrun's column in The Athletic, and Eric Engels as well, who's the beat writer for the Sportsnet for the Montreal Canadiens. Combination of all three of these articles talking a lot about the Habs. Are getting a ton of media attention right now when it comes to trade rumors, considering, we're into January now. We're still a ways from the deadline, but certainly the Habs are widely expected to be a seller given where they're at in the standings, and it makes a lot of sense that a number of these players will be on their way out. But some of the ones getting the attention are certainly some bigger names like Ben Chiarot and Carey Price. Now, Chiarot's pretty much a given to be moved, given the fact that he's a pending UFA. He's a defenseman that should be in fairly high demand, given the defense rental market this year. And another team that's been linked to him that we hadn't heard of before until today, when Friedman put out his blog, was talking about the St. Louis Blues having interest. And there's been some talk about the Florida Panthers recently as well. So those are the two teams more recently talked about it. Chiarot was linked at one point to the Oilers, but given the state of where things are at there, I'm not sure that they're going to do anything to add a rental. It doesn't make sense for Ken Holland to mortgage the future for a rental player when at this point the playoffs are not a certainty the way they're playing. I think if they can get their act together and get themselves back in a better spot, maybe they will add at the deadline. But if the Oilers are making any trades now, it has to be a hockey trade with longer term implications. It just doesn't make sense to add a rental player in that state. But Chiarot would make a lot of sense. The Blues have been doing really well lately. I fully expect them to add. The Panthers are doing really well. I fully expect them to add. It makes a lot of sense that they would be that extra complementary depth piece to really add and take their decor up another level. So we'll see where those goes, but that's the latest on him. And of course, LeBrun and Engels both talking about Carey Price today. Now, LeBrun had in his article had a comment or a quote here saying that a few rival NHL front office execs have mentioned him, that they are very curious to see Carey Price play and to see if the old Carey Price essentially will be present in the form that they saw him before when the playoff run last year, and they would be interested to see if a deal could be reached before the deadline or into the offseason. So many NHL executives are certainly keeping an eye on things, given the fact that it's not often a goalie of his caliber would become available. For starters. Secondly, obviously he's going to have a lot of say over if and when he goes anywhere, given his no move clause. And it's widely expected if a deal is going to take place, Montreal is going to have no choice but to eat a bunch of salary here, probably retain upwards of 50%, and take a contract back from whoever ends up being the highest bidder. For doing that, they're likely going to get, I would hope, a good range of picks and prospects to make the acquisition here. I'm sure Jeff Gorton's not going to want to come into Montreal and have one of his first deeds be to trade the franchise all-star goalie that's been there for so long and had so much success for pennies on the dollar. I don't see that being something that he wants to do, but it is widely expected that if the conversations haven't already taken place, that it will be in the near future here, that they have to talk to Price and find out what he wants to do, because he's got 4 years left at $10.5 million. In his mid-30s. Does he want to go through a rebuild? Probably not, right? So it makes sense that they might try to accommodate that. In Eric Engels' Sportsnet piece, he was a mailbag column, so he was asked in the first question of the article quite bluntly about the future of Carey Price, and that's exactly what he had to say, that, putting that it was basically just 4 players that he deems to be, untouchable right now, and that's the young core that they want to probably build around. And even not a lot of young core, there's some question marks about where they're at in their careers, but certainly they're young enough that you still have lots of confidence about their future abilities, and that includes Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, Alexander Romanov, and Caden Gooley. Now, of course, Gooley was having a good showing in Team Canada at the World Juniors before it got shut down. We know Suzuki, has had a little bit more success at the NHL level. And, of course, Caulfield's struggling this year. Romanov's had his ups and downs as well. But these guys are really young on a team that's underperforming. You have to factor all that in. There's no reason why the Habs should want to trade any of those players at this stage of where things are at. When it comes to Price, though, like I said, it makes a lot of sense that they would have this conversation with them and say, listen, if they can take a contract back from a team they're going to want shorter term. But, the teams that Eric Engels mentioned as being that the ones he thought made the most sense was the Avalanche and the Oilers. And that's not necessarily linked to any kind of rumor that they've had conversations or anything of that nature. There's always been the Avalanche stuff and I think a lot of that is because of the Patrick Waugh situation where he was traded to Colorado. And of course, Price is the modern day Patrick Waugh when it comes to the goaltending. Obviously very different personalities, but essentially, the two bigger goalie names in the franchise's history and modern history here. So there's always that correlation in that respect. And I think that's part of it. But if you look at the Avalanche, that's what they're missing. A lot of people would say is that star goaltender. So does it make sense? Sure it does. Is it complicated? Absolutely. Same with the Oilers. We just talked about them. They're missing that star goaltender. Now, could he be that guy for them? Absolutely, he could. If he can do with the Oilers what he did with Montreal last year in the playoffs, they'd be a way better situation. But here's the thing. Neither one of those teams are going to have any kind of easy situation because of the cap. So you take half that income out for the cap hit, so you knock it down to, say, $5.25 million. Okay, now we're getting a little bit easier, but then you got to take a contract back, $4 or $5 million as well, and on top of that, throw in something to make it worth your while to make the deal for the future. Now, the Oilers have some prospects that would be interesting, but who would they throw in as another roster player? It's difficult to say. There's different options there. I'm not saying it couldn't work, but it certainly was far from easy. And Price has to agree to it. Is the other big caveat here is that he has a no move. So does he want to go to Edmonton? Nobody really knows because we don't know if they've had these conversations with him or not. Same thing goes for, the Avalanche. Would he want to go there? Maybe. We really don't have a clue, right? At the end of the day, he's going to have the final say. But the Avalanche, again, is still a team with a lot of youth and different picks and prospects and players that they could probably make it work. But like I said, the Habs would have to take half back in the salary cap retention and a decent sized contract with probably at least where Price has 4 years on his deal, probably at least 2 years of a not so great contract, or one that they could even out some money the other way for a couple of years. And then, like I said, obviously something to make it worth their while when it comes to some picks and prospects as well for Montreal. So I do think it makes a ton of sense for them to be having these conversations. We really don't know where things are at because if they've had these conversations, it's been kept private so far. But certainly where Montreal is at and everything, it makes a ton of sense that it could happen. But if Carey Price doesn't play either at all or very little going to the deadline, I really don't see it being a situation that would involve a trade. Like, nobody's going to trade for him unless they can see a decent amount of games and be confident that the old Carey Price is returned. And if that doesn't happen, then I would think it's more likely that we might see this maybe in the offseason. Still, like I said, a complicated deal, lots of money involved, a no move. It's not simple. It could drag on for some time, and that's assuming that both the team and the player would want to move on. And it would make sense to me that both would want to. So we'll see where everything goes. But let me know your Carey Price mock trades down just for fun, of course, down in the comments so we can discuss further. And we can see where everybody thinks that it's realistic that he could end up. But we'll have to wait a while likely before anything has a chance to become real. So let me know your thoughts and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.